This is Warren's Most Liked segment, in which you can share how you got started with Android, the problems you had along the way, and much more. If you don't know what to say, we'll help you along the way.
And now we'll move to our Android Journey section, and I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Jessica Mangan. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
And I'm going to pass this over to Warren because this is his favourite section, and it's amazing when he does it. Warren.
So, Jessica, welcome to my favorite segment of the Android podcast. And you know what? We've been pining away for you to come on and talk about this for a long time. And I was just about give up on you, girl. But now here you are and talking about your Android journey story. And I'm glad that Brandon has come along with you. So we're going to have a treat here. So we're looking forward to your Android journey story. I know you are also a collector of phones and things like that. And that's the part that always excites me when people move from phone to phone and all of that. So Jessica, you've got the floor, girl. Take us through that journey of yours and go down memory lane.
Okay, so I first started in 2010 or 2011. I'm not quite sure which year it was, but I started with the old Huawei phone. It was 2.2 or 2.3. Then I jumped from that phone to a phone that Brandon now has, which is the Brandon, can you help me out? Because my brain is like.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool phone, the Samsung Galaxy Exhibit.
Yeah, which I had to use speech on it because it was so tiny. I had a hard time seeing what I was doing on it, and there was no magnification at the time. And that was a 4.0 or 4.1 phone. Android 4.0, 4.1. And then I switched to some years later I switched to the ZTE Z-Max, and then the Z-Max Pro when that came out. And then I then jumped to the Alcatel A30 Fierce, which I loved. All three of those phones I freaking loved. Those phones were like easy for me to see. They had good magnification software on them and stuff, and just easy to navigate, and I really enjoyed them. I actually wanted to give Brandon my Z-Max Pro, but that didn't happen.
That's okay. We can find one on Amazon.
But yeah, and then Brandon got me into the Samsungs. He got me back into Samsungs with the A32 5G and just all kinds of different phones. I got to try the LG Velvet and Stylo 5, the Pixel 2 XL, because I was not liking the Pixel 5. To be honest, I was not a fan of it because of the audio quality and my point of view. It was not good. And then now I have the Pixel 6 Pro and a Rebel 5 and a Moto
G5G 2023 Stylus Edition.
Yes. I love phones with styluses on them.
Hey, and the Moto said hello to the group.
You know, the interesting thing, Jess, because it's not often that we find people who are low vision users and kind of rely on magnification. Do you consider yourself someone who uses magnification most of the time, or do you prefer using the TTS, or just a combination of both, or depends on the situation?
Depends on the situation. For me, I mostly use magnification, but sometimes when my eyes are hurting or it's just a bad day, when I have a sty or something like that, then I will use speech. It just depends on how I'm feeling and depends on like what I'm doing with it.
She's also been wanting to get into using the speech more, not because of her eyes, but just so that she can learn how to demonstrate Android apps too, so that maybe she can contribute some apps to the
Yep.
podcast and stuff too. That's been something that we've talked about a while back, and that was something that she really, really wanted to get into.
Fabulous. Now, tell me, Jess, out of all of these phones that you have, which one of them, if you were asked to pick as to which one is your favorite, I mean, whether it's from the past or currently or what you have, which one would be your favorite phone?
Oh goodness. I
That's
have to
terrible, isn't it?
say I miss my Alcatel. I honestly miss my Alcatel A30 Fierce. Like that and Mercy Max Pro. Those two were my favorite phones. Back in the day, and like using those on a daily basis, whether it was speech or magnification, was honestly a lot of fun.
That's interesting because I'd always said, my Galaxy S4 was probably one of my most favorite phones of all time for some reason. Of course, I'm not talking about the Pixel line, but I mean in general. It was the phone that I really, really liked back then. And I wish I have it again to see what it feels like, after. Oh gosh, that's 10 years ago when that Galaxy
I
S4
still
came
have
out.
a Galaxy S4, Warren, believe it or not, sitting right just behind this
Oh,
laptop
wow.
where I'm on right now. And guess what? It still turns on. Here's the kicker. The highest it'll go is Android 5.0. Now here's the irony of that. The Galaxy Grand Prime that I have over here in my collection of devices will go up to Android 5.1. Now, if that's not a little bit interesting, I don't know what is, because you'd think that the S4 would actually be going to 5.1, but it's not the case. Apparently, the Grand Prime was just a hair newer than the Galaxy S4. So there's a little bit of a little factoid for you about the two phones if you put them in tandem. And the Galaxy S4, I remember the Galaxy S4 for the simple symptom that it had of, because the speaker was so close to the microphone, that when you made recordings, you'd better suspend talkback, or you're going to have a very clippy microphone, courtesy of the speech coming out of the phone, out of the bottom of the phone.
Now, Brandon, I think that mine had 5.1, though. Is yours a carrier version? Because
Yeah, it was
mine
a
was the
Sprint.
PGE
It was a
version.
Sprint one. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
a
so
Sprint.
that's why. But
Yeah. Oh,
mine
that
did
would
get
make more sense.
5.1 for sure.
Oh, well, see, there you go. So I
Yeah.
guess if it goes back to the thing I've heard you say, there's a certain guy that runs a Telegram group called Blind Android Users, and he said things about it's a good idea to have a phone carrier unlocked for a certain reason. I think Warren might be the guy responsible for that point. And it
And
was a
yeah,
very valid point too, by the way.
yeah, and back in those days, Google had those PGEs, and like I've always said, if we still had that program, and just imagine that you have a PGE Galaxy S23 Ultra or something like that. I had always said if they did, I would be buying Samsung phones. I was a very staunch Samsung guy, always defending Samsung. Now, John has replaced me in that department. Thank you, John.
But I was a fan of PGEs in the day, but these days, I think, in my opinion, my humble opinion, Samsung software, I think, has gotten better than Google's software. So I wouldn't want a stock version of Android on my Samsung phone. Like that's one of the main reasons I go with Samsung, is because of the software. And that's saying a lot, because software used to be a frustration on Samsung devices just a few years ago.
It's funny. Dire circumstances call for dire consequences, according to John's most recent comment there. I had to, John, no pun intended. But there's an interesting point to be made about the older phones, and I can tell you guys from talking to Jess, because I talked to her when she had a lot of these phones, and there was a variety of different sound qualities. that I remember hearing her on the Alcatel, for example. She had a very interesting audio because it was compressed. If you remember the old Olympus digital recorders, her Alcatel had that slightly what do I call that? Not really compressed, but hard limited audio that you couldn't distort it. She actually tried to intentionally distort it by putting the microphone against the echo. She had a echo dot, and she tried to turn it up at max volume. And I thought, well, this is going to distort the microphone. No, you just couldn't do it. And then with the Z-Max, it was so crisp. I was like, my goodness, I felt like I was in Florida, not in Iowa. So it was just like, big difference, and those were the two, like she said, her favorite phones. The thing I'm surprised, my question would be her favorite phones of her current era.
Jess, which one would that be if you were to pick one? I know it's always a difficult thing to put someone in that place. And I think that if you had asked me that question, if I had not had the Pixel 8, I'll be struggling with that particular issue too. So I understand it. You don't have to answer it.
For me, it's honestly a toss-up between the Pixel 6 Pro and my Moto. Honestly, like it's that's a hard one for me.
And here lately, the Rebel too.
Yeah.
Like literally, ever since she got that Rebel, she looks at all three of those phones one and the same, like they're cousins of each other now.
Can I just say the only reason Warren would be struggling because all he's bought before the Pixel 8 Pro is other Pixels and they're all rubbish.
Oh,
so that's why he couldn't name a decent phone because he's never owned one. He's literally never owned a decent phone.
I really like the part of the rubbish. Every time Ed says rubbish, I love that.
You need a connection with Pixels. Like he's never owned a decent phone in his life.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe the 8 is, maybe it isn't.
Is that like the guys that say that the only reason they own a Panasonic is because it has the talking caller ID for the house phones, but they don't for the VTech because they don't like the slightly pinched audio quality of the VTech? I mean, I hear that say that's kind of like you're almost likening Warren's Pixels under that a little bit there, Ed. That's a but really the Pixels, in my opinion, I wouldn't say that the older ones are rubbish. I think they're okay.
I don't think Google knows how to make hardware. I just think it's a software company. That's always been my view.
He's just saying that because he's mad because the 8 is 64-bit only. That's the only reason.
Thank you very much.
I don't care. I'm literally not bothered. Like, I've been saying it before. Warren will attest to this. I've said this well before Google was 64-bit only, haven't I?
Yeah.
Like I've literally said this for 3 years.
Let's give a little credit where credit is due. Frankly, I think that Google finally turned around hardware-wise. I think as of Pixel.
So you thought they were rubbish as well?
So the rubbish. I think one of the rubbishes out there was the Pixel 5.
The Pixel 5.
Google, I love you, but that was rubbish.
And of course that's the one Ed bought because.
You know what? My Pixel 5 kind of said "See you later, alligator" in terms of it can't be used as a regular phone right now. I mean, it could if you eSIM'd it, but I went and gave it to my Voc Rehab person because they wanted to try an older. They didn't care if the phone was a slight smidgen older.
Yeah.
But the bad news is the SIM tray. We were going to try to put a SIM card in it, and guess what happened to the SIM tray? It said,
"You broke it.
Sorry. We're sorry. We are your SIM tray. We would unofficially like to break on you while you are attempting to remove it from the phone." Now, by the way, that's something that's never happened to Jess hardly at all whenever she's taken SIM cards out of phones because she has better dexterity than I do. So it's like she could pull SIM cards out of phones. Like me, I'm just like, okay, don't drop it. Don't drop it. No, I'm going to lose it. If it goes down in the vent, I'm in trouble. Blah, blah. Or if it goes down here, I'm going to lose it because, they're so tiny. And Jess is just like, oh, that's okay. Tiny little thing. Gets it in there in a hurry, and I'm just like, what? But anyway, she pulls out the SIM tray and doesn't even, as normal as she's done many times before with that phone, and it worked just fine. It's just that one day, she goes to take it out because we're going to give it to somebody that was living with us who tragically we lost due to health issues here back in September. And what happens? The SIM tray goes. We didn't.
Oh,
Well,
no.
no more.
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
that Pixel 5 is complete rubbish.
It's just yeah. So
Now it's rubbish.
what Pixel 5 reminds me of is Windows ME. Absolute rubbish.
Windows
But
Mistaken
you
Edition.
said
Hey,
how
Windows
amazing it
Mistaken
was when you
Edition.
owned one. You loved it when you owned it. You didn't disown it then, did you, Warren?
No,
'Cause
I
you-
went back to Windows 2000 to be honest. I
Yeah.
didn't like Windows ME. It was
Windows
absolute
ME.
rubbish.
Windows ME is likened unto a haunted house. People visit it, but they don't want to live there.
Yeah.
I always
But-
compare it to
Brandon, you remind me of a story. My little wifelet who's upstairs. She'd come over from Canada prior to being my wifelet, and I was going to give her my 3GS back when this was a thing, and I just bought. I think it was a 4S.
Well, what
And
did she
obviously-
do to you? Why would you punish her with that thing?
Oh, because she had something nonsense, like a BlackBerry that wasn't a BlackBerry, like some Huawei thing with a nonsense on it. So
But
this is
Ed, you are doing it. You are doing it backwards. Usually, the hubbies or the boyfriend will give the other half the better stuff. I mean, like
No,
my friend.
I've
when I
literally,
lived in
I've
Denver-
never done that. No, that's why typically that. Silly boy.
I've never done that either, for the record.
No.
Oh gosh,
Silly
guys,
boy.
I'm ashamed of you boys.
Anyway, the problem
I
was
send you and John my condolences, Ed, at this point.
Yeah,
You're in
yeah.
trouble now.
the thing is
My
though,
wife
like-
doesn't care what fun
No,
she has.
exactly.
Or
Like
maybe
she had
she
this
does,
nonsense.
but
She had
she's
this
just
nonsense
keeping
phone.
it quiet because she doesn't want to end up on Do Not Disturb. Get it?
Yeah. Exactly. But it's a bit like the story Brandon was telling. So I had this 3GS which had the standard size SIM at the time, and the 4S had a micro SIM. It wasn't nano yet, and but it didn't crack out. Like you couldn't push it through. So we could have done a SIM swap, and my wife decided that she didn't need to do a SIM swap because she could watch YouTube, and got a Stanley knife out. And she was talking to me, and she was cutting the SIM card, and then all of a sudden she wasn't talking to me. Like she stopped communicating, and apparently this was because she saw a tiny little bit of gold fly, and she thought she'd broken my SIM card because the gold, whatever the gold bit is, fell off.
Yeah.
She didn't. She didn't.
The piece that
Yeah,
that
it chipped
attaches
off.
to the
Yeah.
yeah.
But
basically
apparently,
chipped.
it wasn't too deep because she passed me this cut SIM card according to the YouTube thing prior to you being able to prize out your own SIM card, and it worked. It went in the 4S and it actually did work.
Yeah,
And
I actually
even though she broke
had
it.
a SIM card at one point too, and it worked.
Yeah,
It
I
was
mean,
a
it
little
could be
too
worse.
thick, but you
Mhm.
could just cram it in.
I mean,
Yeah.
it could have been worse. It could have been my friend Anthony getting his SIM card stuck in his Galaxy S7. He literally had this Galaxy S7. The guy somehow managed to get his SIM card wedged into his S7 without the tray, I might add. We were not even going to talk about how bad he
That
was.
happened to me with my SIM.
Midas touch, I might add.
we had that on our mailing list very recently. Someone did that, and I guess it's not always obvious. They
No, it
pull the
really
thing
isn't.
out and then just put the SIM card in the phone. That
I
happened.
mean, it causes a great discord.
Well, it doesn't
yeah.
work, obviously.
Notice I said Discord, and Jess had a thought. By the way, the Discord channel hasn't been used in a long time. Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah,
I was gonna
I
say-
think you need to get a Telegram to get it sorted.
I was gonna say, that actually happened to me with my ZMAX Pro once. My first ZMAX Pro, I was switching SIM trays, from the ZMAX to the ZMAX, or SIM cards from the ZMAX to the ZMAX Pro, and it just had, I'm gonna fall into the unit before I can even put the tray in there, and I'm like, are you serious? So my ex had to go and get me a replacement ZMAX Pro at the corporate for me, and went and did it and brought it back and everything, and I was actually able to put the SIM card in there and everything, and so that's not something that is fun to do.
I think that Sony has a better implementation of the SIM slots and all of that. Because I can tell you, I had gotten a SIM card wedged in the Moto G5. It's one of the most idiotic implementation of a SIM card that I'd ever seen, or SIM tray rather, that I'd ever seen, was on the Moto G5. And it wasn't only me. A lot of people were having their SIM card stuck in there because, you got to put one on the back of it, the SD card on the back, and this one, and it's hard to know which one is what. And I got it stuck in there. I took it to Battery Plus, and the guy was able to, get it out. It's just absolutely stupid.
I know what you're talking about. I've never seen the Sony. I've never owned a Sony phone. I've never
They're
owned a
amazing
Xiaomi.
phones. I love Sony phones.
Are their microphones decent? Like, do they sound good? I mean, some people have said
I
they're
think so.
noise reduced, but
Well, you can do what you want with them. Like it depends what you do. I mean, they are noise reduced natively, but they're like audio wise, like listening wise, they're really good.
I'll tell you what really gets me is that none of Jess's phones in her list that she gave you were flip in terms of the flip variety or the sliders. Now, you'll remember, I think a while back when we did my Android journey, I mentioned that I had an LG Enlighten. Well, it's interesting. She got to see the Enlighten. Now, that doesn't mean she hasn't seen slider phones before, but I'll tell you what, the only other phone besides that one that I ever saw that was a slider, not suggesting that others didn't have sliders, was the Droid 4, Moto Droid 4. Does anybody remember those phones from back then?
Droid does.
Droid.
So she saw your Enlightened, but she wasn't enlightened and didn't buy one.
No, she saw the Enlightened and was rather darkened and went away from it.
Yeah, wasn't enlightened.
It was all rubbish to her.
Well, I never had a slider phone, but what I did have, and I wish you could still get, I had an HTC Cha-Cha, which had a QWERTY keyboard, a small QWERTY keyboard on. And I wish you could still buy phones with small
Wait, did
QWERTY
you just
keyboards.
say
I tried to.
HTC Cha-Cha?
Yeah.
How many dances could you do on the QWERTY keyboard with that Cha-Cha?
I know. I don't know.
Thank you
I
very
think they
much,
should. I think they should have brought out models for each type of dance. Actually,
So you could actually, if you know the song "Blue" by Eiffel 65, for each kick of the kick drum on the song, you could keep going through all the letters on the keyboard.
So Brandon did what I just tried to do. So I was going to say, when you got your Cha-Cha, did you find it easily, or you led a merry dance before you bought it?
oh,
But Brandon did the dance joke.
He beat me
yes.
to it.
I knew that was going to happen, but it was a touch screen as well. But the keyboard, like you could type all your text on the keyboard, and I loved it.
See,
I think
that
I
would
had
be
the Windows
cool if they had
version
phones
of
like that.
on.
It
That
would
would be cool if they had versions, phones like that. I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I said something in the Blind Android Users group on Telegram that I want to share here on the podcast, which is something that I think is kind of important to this. And, we're talking about these sliders, we're talking about these flips, and now folds. And I'm starting to see this trend going on now where folds and flips are starting to kind of make a resurgence again. We're seeing things like the Samsung Z Flip, the Z Fold. They're expensive, but still, people are liking them for whatever reason now. It just kind of is. It's almost it's kind of a trip down memory lane, but with a little bit of new kind of. It's almost like having a newborn. The old flips give birth unto the new flips, unto the new folds, and now it's just sort of that pattern is arising again, where you're gonna. And I kind of wonder what other companies are going to start releasing flips. And I mentioned to some people, and I might have said this in the group too, that wouldn't it be interesting if a company came out with an affordable flip and an affordable fold? We haven't gotten that far yet, I don't think, but I just have a feeling that that's going to start being a thing, because people are kind of liking their flips. They can flip them up and got a bigger screen, close it down, small screen. Same with the fold.
Also, it was really satisfying if you had a conversation that was really annoying to be able to snap the phone shut afterwards, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
But
I mean, my Samsung
these
Haven.
flips are a lot bigger. Like the 2000s ones. The idea was to get as small as phone as possible, wasn't it? Like if you saw some of those Samsungs from the early 2000s, they were tiny, absolutely tiny.
Yeah, they were really cute.
Yeah, and that's not the deal these days, even though it's a flip. Like,
Oh, I
they're
mean
a
the
lot
Haven.
bigger.
You know the Haven, Ed. That's one example. Is that the Haven? I mean,
Yeah.
it was a tiny phone, but you flip it up and there, it's big keys.
But
to
maybe
say-
Yeah, but it's still it's a lot smaller.
it was a tiny
than the,
screen, though. You're
but,
right.
but
It
maybe
was so tiny.
maybe somebody will make a smaller one now. You know,
Don't be. Now,
not
don't say
not
that
as
too
probably
fast.
not
You
as
might be
small as
right.
they were, but I, you know, bigger isn't always better. You know.
You know, no, you're right. It's not, and sometimes
That's what I
People
tell the
want
wife
stuff.
anyway.
People that want stuff that fits in their pocket. Oh no!
Oh boy.
Oh dear.
Fee, I thought you liked them big. No.
We're not going into what I like or don't like. This is not the venue.
Why does that always get turned back on me? Even though, yeah,
This is
nothing
not
was
the venue for such conversations.
Oh boy.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to anyone that just heard that.
Well, Jess, we want to thank you so much for your Android journey. And like I said, we love, I in particular love these Android journey stories. And so, guys, if you're listening out there, be brave like Jess. Come on and talk about your Android journey story. Again, Jessica, thank you so much for that wonderful story. And I hope that one of these days you will send me that velvet.
I really enjoyed telling my story. And yes, more people should definitely reach out and tell a story.
Don't be shy.
Exactly. Exactly.